What you're about to experience is one man's quest to see beyond the tumultuous period we're in and to envision what lies just beyond our grasp, yet well within our reach. Welcome to Larry Rifkin's America Trends, where the future has arrived, and it's just in time.
Welcome back to America Trends. John Kropsic and Larry Rifkin. Hope you're doing well today. And we've got another interesting topic. We've done a lot, John, on Amazon in the past and the four horsemen of the apocalypse in terms of technology groups. Amazon, Google, Facebook,
Microsoft.
And Apple.
Oh, Apple. Is it Microsoft in there somewhere?
I don't think they were. No, I think they've been...
They've fallen.
All right,
they've been dethroned.
They're the fifth horseman. But you know what I was not aware of, and we also did another podcast talking about the way Amazon has taken advantage of tax credits for hiring older workers.
Right.
So these are things that we have talked about in the past about Amazon. But when I came across this writing by Robert Engel, and he's the retired CEO of CoBank, and he's the chief spokesperson of the Free and Fair Markets Initiative. And I was a little bit surprised because I thought Amazon, as much as they're becoming a behemoth and they're controlling so much of the retail space, both their impact on bricks and mortar and what they're doing online.
Not to mention they're in Whole Foods.
Yeah.
I think they're in pharmacy now. Didn't they buy
I believe they're getting into, or at least they threaten to, and that set everyone scurrying. And that's the impact that they have. The minute they suggest we're going to get into some particular
It's kind of scary,
area.
though. They're getting big so fast, and you see the brick and mortar stores just falling by the wayside.
And, of course, what they do to those competitors online.
Right.
I mean, if they want to gobble you up,
Yeah.
consider yourself eaten. But what I didn't realize, Cookie Monster. What I didn't realize is through Free and Fair Markets Initiative, we're learning that they have numerous subsidies and tax incentives that they have received. And the minute they say, we want to build something in your state, or we want to build our second headquarters or whatever, everybody rushes.
Well, you're right. There's a competition for Amazon.
Exactly. So they're giving up all kinds of benefit to Amazon. And John, look, I like Jeff Bezos. I think he's an incredibly gifted guy. But does he really need more money when you look at the fact that they have received over $1.5 billion in state and local taxpayer subsidies since 2000?
It doesn't seem right, since you got small businesses and you got even big businesses struggling, and here you're helping out the monster.
Yeah, it doesn't.
There's just something not right about that at all.
Absolutely. So let's talk to Robert Engel, figure out why this is going on, when in fact there are so many people, as you say, struggling on Main Street. You see all these empty downtowns, at least in communities that we see all the time. So why is Amazon? Why does it have its hand out, and why are we giving them benefit? I don't understand, really.
Well, let's get him on, because I'm anxious to hear this.
All right. Robert Engel, again, from the Free and Fair Markets Initiative. Bob Engel is with us. He is the retired CEO of CoBank and chief spokesperson of the Free and Fair Markets Initiative. Now, I know that's a nonprofit coalition, but tell us a little bit about it and what it is that you're attempting to do.
Well, thanks, Larry, and thanks for having me. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you. Look, the vision of Free and Fair Markets Initiative is pretty simple, but it's pretty powerful. And that is, we want to make sure that we have a modern, fair marketplace that serves the best interests of individual Americans and the nation as a whole. We think it's important that that be maintained. And our goal really is to raise awareness and raise awareness to, some of the emerging market trends. And of course, there's a lot of emerging market trends, particularly given, as technology continues to advance. But we're concerned about those that are stifling competition, they're stifling innovation, certainly influencing federal and local government spending in a big way, putting consumers' data in harm's way, and limiting choice, consumer choice. So So that's really what we're here for.
When you hear people say that I'm a real free market person, and I heard a gubernatorial candidate in my state say that recently, and yet do they really understand what they're saying? There is so much corporate welfare and subsidies and various incentives that are given to so many companies. Is the marketplace in general fair? Is it getting fairer or less fair as we go along, perhaps with the influence of technology and all these magna brands?
Look, Larry, you raise a very important point, and I'm not going to argue that overall the market is free, but I can tell you that the fair part is starting to disappear a little bit as we create these organizations that, quite frankly, wield power and wield influence that no one has ever seen. If we think back to the business models that were scrutinized back in the Industrial Revolution, you think about the Rockefeller family, you think about the Vanderbilt family, and I would tell you, people were asking questions about, does this make sense? Is this fair? Is this the best? Is this the best for the American people? They asked those questions long before those organizations were at a spot where, quite frankly, an organization like Amazon is today.
Well, the trust busting of course, Teddy Roosevelt is legendary. And I'll tell you, I heard our president today talking about all the achievements of the administration. And one that he, of course, always points to is deregulation. But I don't know that American consumers, Americans who also ingest the air and chemicals and the like, should we all be grateful that we're stripping regulation away in seemingly all facets of American society?
Well, Larry, it's like with a lot of things. In some cases, the answer is yes, but in some cases, the answer is no. But if we think about how we built an economy here in this country, a free enterprise economy that really is the idol of the entire world. One of the things we've always had is guardrails on the road. Okay, there have to be some guardrails, and some of those guardrails come in the form of laws, and come in the form of regulation. Some come in the form of just organizations and companies, quite frankly, living up to the ethical responsibility that they have as organizations that are given the privilege and the freedom and the right to operate in this country and to create value for the company, to create worth for themselves. When you're afforded that opportunity, we happen to strongly believe that there are obligations and responsibilities that come along with that. So it's like anything else. We need to put we need to have red lights where there need to be red lights. We need to have yellow lights where there's yellow lights. But it's just this whole concept, as I envision, of guardrails. And if you strip too many and you strip them in the wrong places, like on a curve in the road, you're just looking for trouble.
Well, when I look at trade policy, for example, you look at where free trade has come, and you say to yourself, well, if this didn't work that well for a lot of the workers in the Midwest, and a lot of the upset that brought about the result in 2016 was because of people feeling left out, then maybe we need to look again at the influence of money, the influence of some of these multinational corporations that have been guiding our trade policy. And if we look at many of the small businesses in America, they were trampled on while these companies rushed to the exits because they could leave America, whereas many of the small mom and pops, they're here and they have to struggle with many of the laws and regulations and limitations. So I'm wondering whether the trade policy, for example, and any of the inequities that this administration sees in that are again a sign that perhaps too much influence and too much money from large companies and organizations really can drive policy in ways that people may not understand.
Larry, you've given your listeners a great recent history lesson of how the landscape is beginning to develop, and it certainly is scary. And in the specific case that we're focused on right now with Amazon, when you take a look at the amount of lobbying they've done over the past 20 years, and you kind of correlate that with the amount of taxpayer subsidies that they've received, It's over $1.5 billion since 2000. And this is in spite of a company that's raking in record revenues. They really don't need that, despite the fact that they generated $177 billion in revenue last year alone. It's one of the richest companies in the world. They're still asking the taxpayers to fork over their hard-earned money in the form of subsidies.
Now, I've got to tell you this, Bob. There are a lot of people listening, and you got to back up a little bit, because we just jumped into the Amazon issue, which I wanted to get to, of course, and spend most of our time on. But there are many people out there who are members, who are Prime members and love it, who are saying, wait a minute, I didn't know that Amazon got any benefit or any subsidy. I thought that they were totally out there on their own, creating a whole new dynamic online marketplace. Let's back up and explain this.
Look, Larry, and I apologize that I got a little bit out in front of you there, because the underlying point you made is this: it's really not up to a government to pick winners and losers, and it's definitely not up to the government to pick winners and losers when they've been influenced by those potential winners or losers. and that is the issue behind the trade issues that exist out there today. Okay, and the issues that they're behind the specific issue that we're speaking about here with Amazon. Amazon built a business model, and as that business model evolved, they began to see that, hey, look, in order for us to offer the type of value, and I think most members of Prime would argue that they do get a great value. No other organization could put out a Prime membership at $119. It can't happen. Well, how can it happen? Well, it can happen because of the lobbying efforts have generated these taxpayer subsidies that will allow that business model to operate and to sustain itself. And as you mentioned, whether it's in trade or whether it's in this instance, okay, there's a lot of small businesses that have been left behind. There's a lot of jobs that have been lost. The research we've done is tremendous, and I would point anyone to our recent research, Prime on Our Dime, that's available at info@freeandfairmarketsinitiative.org, to really get into the specifics of what these issues are, what the cost of the taxpayer is, and let them make their own decision. Is this a good use of taxpayer dollars? We think not, particularly when there's much better uses of them.
And why would Amazon really need a lot of these subsidies and spend so much on local and federal lobbying? They're so successful. I mean, they just went over, $1 trillion, and they became, the second trillion-dollar company in history after Apple, though I know they fell back and, who knows, they can vacillate a little bit. But what would they be without these subsidies? Why do they even need them? They're so wildly successful and so disruptive in so many ways.
They don't need them. That is the whole point. And this, the current initiative, as they look for a second headquarters, is Exhibit A today. But unfortunately, they predicated their business model on the ability to generate these taxpayer subsidies so that they could offer, value to the consumer that a small business or even a medium-sized business or even some competitors can't offer. And that's where that playing field gets unlevel, and that's where you lose the fair part of the free and fair markets.
And it's amazing. Any area that they decide to dip their toe in. For example, I have a family member who was, interviewing for Wayfair, and this family member did not get that job. And I said to him or her, don't worry about it, because that job will probably be gone whenever Jeff Bezos wakes up to the fact that Wayfair has built an imprint on, the furniture sales online, and he wants to take it over and take out half of the workforce online. And we're not even talking about all of the retail brick and mortar businesses that have been taken out by virtue of Amazon.
Look, that the example that you gave to your relative there, and the caution you gave to your relative, is it better that you got the job or better that you didn't get the job? Maybe better that they didn't get the job, because that's exactly what this organization has been built into today, and it's of the size and scale, and has generated the excitement that's necessary It's building off of these taxpayer subsidies. It has a terrible record of what it pays its employees. And by doing all this and also, quite frankly, not investing in the communities where they have these distribution centers, let alone the headquarter operations. And so, in other words, what they're doing is that other people are paying the price. We're all for good deals. We're all for the promise of better value. That isn't an issue. But with the benefits, you have to step back and say, what are the costs? Not only the upfront costs, but what are the long-term costs to people, to communities?
Well, we look at communities in the state from which we are emanating, and they're building these distribution centers. Why aren't these politicians saying, well, in order to get any benefit from us, even if you can justify it, which it seems unjustifiable given their scope and given their heft, they don't need any more money. But, in exchange for that, this is what we require you to do. Here's the living wage and the benefits so that your employees aren't going on a state plan for health care. Here are some other requirements. And I can't imagine why the small brick and mortar companies being displaced by them aren't rising up in some small manufacturer or small retail organizations saying, enough of this. You're not giving a dime from this community to them because they are not giving anything back in return. And in fact, leaving in their wake are many empty storefronts on Main Street.
Well, Larry, look, that is really what's behind Free and Fair Markets Initiative. We really want to raise the awareness. And as we begin to raise the awareness and people understand the business model and understand the carnage that is left behind this business model, people are beginning to rise up and people are beginning to ask why. If you think about this whole thing, it's flip-flopped. And whether it's a warehouse or whether it's HQ2, if a company wants to go into a community and says, hey, look, it's important for us to operate in this community because it's close to a population, or this is where we'd like to put our headquarters. Why aren't they approaching the community and saying, here's what's important to us, okay? We want a highly educated workforce. We want great colleges and universities and community college where we can help train people. We want great public infrastructure. We want great communities where our employees can live, where they can work, and where they can raise their family. And we happen to think you here in Connecticut meet that bill. What we'd like to do is because we've had a little experience here in Seattle where maybe we've worn our welcome out a little bit, and maybe we've left a footprint that isn't always isn't as pristine as we'd like it to be. Let's talk about what it is we need, what it is you have, and how do we cooperate? How do we collaborate and make sure that not only our business is successful, because there's nothing about our organization that's against big or against success. The question is, how do you get big, and what do you do once you achieve that success? And that's really where Amazon has gone off the rails. So, why not have that conversation, come together? There's no check that needs to be written. $7 billion or $8 billion that some of these states are offering and these communities and cities are offering now, it's absolutely crazy. No one needs to write a check to them. Matter of fact, the check should actually be coming the other way.
Well,
I
see where Senator...
we're going to create...
I see where Senator Bernie Sanders issued a statement the other day. Let's start with the facts. All over this country, many Amazon employees who work for the wealthiest person on earth are paid wages so low they can't make ends meet. Thousands of Amazon employees are forced to rely on food stamps, Medicaid, public housing because their wages are too low. And I know we did another podcast dealing with a lot of these transient older workers, and they end up going in their RVs across the country, not for recreation and enjoyment, Bob, in their later years, but because they're living out of them and they're working at Amazon centers, and they are encouraged to hire these older workers. They get another tax benefit and write-off as a result.
Look, Larry, I don't agree with Senator Sanders on everything, but he's absolutely spot on this. In this case, okay? Amazon really treats its workers like disposable second-class employees from all we see, all we read. They pay them an average salary of less than $29,000 per year. That's tens of thousands less than virtually every other major tech company. So if they don't value and appreciate their employees, it's pretty hard to see how they're going to value and appreciate the communities that they're in and the footprint that they're leaving in those communities. The fact that they're creating heavier traffic, that housing prices are pushing people out, that there isn't affordable housing. Have that conversation up front as you're looking to build a distribution center. Hey, this is in the right place. Take a look at Connecticut. Amazon won $25 million in taxpayer subsidies for a warehouse just last year. And that's in spite of the fact we're talking about a state, and a great state that really checks all the boxes for HQ2 in terms of things they're looking for. This is a state that's got 127 or 120 billion dollars in an underfunded pension system, that has a debt burden that's close to $50,000 for every taxpayer. Now, why is it a good use of funds to give $25 million or a different number to Amazon?
So how is Amazon so successful in getting all these benefits? Is it because they're putting the right money toward the right campaigns and influencing the right politicians? I mean, because that can't be happening if people push back. And you say that taxpayers should be the primary voice in deciding whether public money is funneled to some of the world's most profitable companies, and Amazon being first on the list. So what are we? We're just, so enamored with, the prime music streaming and the prime movies and getting our packages on time that we're just voiceless in all of this?
Look, I mean, how many times is the taxpayer voiceless, okay? Yes, we do get excited about that. And lawmakers, that's okay if they get excited about the product and the service that they deliver, but they shouldn't get excited about moving that money along. Look, these lawmakers are stewards of funds that we as taxpayers provide to them, okay? And the taxpayers ought to decide where that money goes, not these people that believe like, hey, look, I'll get a headline that says I brought Amazon here. Because I can tell you time and time again across this country, and it will happen with HQ2, everyone gets a real rush of excitement. Hey, Amazon's here. That's great. But then they begin to see their business model. They begin to see their business practices. They begin to see how they treat people. They begin to realize the costs that they hadn't anticipated to have them in the community. Then all of a sudden, the bloom is off the rose.
Do you think that these big tech companies, we did another podcast about this, not just Amazon, but the four horses of the apocalypse, if I can remember them now, Apple, Google, and Amazon and Facebook. Now, they're all very different. But Amazon is probably the gargantuan among all of them. Apple, of course, makes a product, hardware. I don't know how well they do. Are you looking at all these other companies? And what is your general take on whether these big tech companies are at a point well beyond the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and really need to be broken up?
Look, we are looking at all of those, and let me break it up into two buckets. First, about the bucket about how big are they and what influence do they have on our lives. There's something I like to say from time to time, and that is that Amazon's building a moat, and it's getting deeper and deeper and wider around us, and there's no escaping it, and that is what must be. Now, some of these other companies are very powerful as well, but I would tell you when we move over to the second bucket, which is, okay, what is their behavior? What is their business model? Are they making profits? I mean, Amazon, the profitability of Amazon is pretty much nil based upon, there is a profit, but it's pretty nil based upon what their turnover is, what their revenue is. And they've been able to do that because the market supported them with that huge market capitalization that you spoke about, where these other ones, quite frankly, have been a little bit more, they've said, hey, look, we've got to eventually generate the kind of profitability that shareholders expect. And oh, by the way, we have a corporate social responsibility here. When we go into these communities, when we bring people into organizations, our people should be valued and appreciated. We got to pay them a living wage. We need to do that. So I would say Amazon is a bit, on an island as it relates to what they've done, A, how they've achieved their size, and B, what they've done with their success.
When we look at some of the other things that you hold out as core principles, employees at these companies should earn a living wage with fair benefits and reasonable work hours. Now, I know a lot of pressure has been put on Walmart, and I think they've really begun responding to that. You see any sign of that with Amazon? Because there is pressure, your organization, Senator Sanders, you see any more movement in that direction from Amazon?
Look, we are not close enough to see the movement. Certainly, I hope there is. Okay, we would much rather than continuing to put these arguments forward and to raise this awareness and educate people and activate people and advocate against what's going on here. We would much rather they just do what's right. There's never a wrong time to do the right thing. So we would certainly like to see that happen, and we'll just have to kind of continue to monitor. I mean, why wouldn't they? I know as a CEO, that your people they really are your brand, and even those that touch the customers and those that don't. If you can't value and appreciate those people, at the end of the day, it says something about the culture of your organization, and that isn't the type of culture we need, particularly is we create these organizations, Larry, that you spoke about before, that are becoming so large and playing such a huge part in so many parts of our lives.
Free and Fair Markets Initiative. Bob Engel has been with us on America Trends. Bob, is there anything else? First of all, direct us to Prime on our dime, that report, and also any of the other work that you're doing that you think needs some attention and that people who are alert enough listening to this podcast will want to know about.
Yeah, well, thanks, Larry, and thanks again for having me. The report is available at info@freeandfairmarketsinitiative.org. So please look up the report. The other thing I would say is just this. Okay, if you think about economic development, and you think about where economic development has really been successful, okay, over time, and not only in an immediate fashion, but quite frankly in a sustainable way. And one of the things I thought about a lot as a CEO was, it's great to build a business, but are you building a business that is sustainable, and are you building a business that is a good corporate citizen? And when you take a look at the work that's done on in many of the organizations, such as the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, attracting out-of-state businesses, really account for a small percentage, pretty much single digit of all jobs created in a state every year. And instead, what we need, and when people think, because economic development's not going away and subsidies aren't going to go away for economic development, it's what politicians live on. But we want them to be good stewards of those funds that we as taxpayers give them. So I would encourage all these local leaders to think about investing in startup ecosystems. Help these small and middle market firms achieve the scale that they need. It doesn't be huge, but there is a scale requirement to operate in today's market environment, particularly a global market environment. And then take a look at where you want to deepen your industry specializations. Local leaders can be smart about that. And you know what? The voters of this country should demand this kind of good economic development, and they certainly ought to demand much more transparency on how their taxpayer dollars are spent. Here you have people that are walking away from promises that were made to workers in these states and municipalities for a year, instead to write a check to a company as successful as Amazon. It just doesn't pass the Snicker test, Larry.
Bob Engel, Chief Spokesperson for Free and Fair Markets Initiative. Thank you so much for joining us today on America Trends.
Thank you, Larry. Pleasure.